Right, hello. Just explaining a back routine that I did 5/29, 2025. The first exercise that I did earlier in the day was just a false grip ring pull up. And as I've stated before, in doing my pull ups, I'm trying to focus more on full extension at the bottom, and that kind of, for me at least, makes it much harder. Um, Instead of doing like the bent arm reps, I guess you could call them. So especially with the false grip, it does make a heck of a difference doing the full extension at the bottom. Kind of trying to do a rep at like a full dead hang. So I started off doing just 5 reps, body weight only. Um, and I kind of chose to keep the reps lower because this movement can tear up your wrist pretty quickly. So I'm trying to build up the calluses there on the skin area so that it doesn't affect me as much. So start off 5 reps, then I added 10 pounds, did 3 reps, 25 pounds, 3 reps, 44 pounds, 2 reps, 60 pounds, 1 rep, and then I wanted to go for kind of a higher single, so I did 70 pounds for 1 rep. And I think that was pretty much my maximum for now, or at least fairly close. That one was pretty tough. So then I did a down set of 40, and I only did 3 reps on that one. I kind of wanted more reps, but I had the weight set too low, and it kept resting on the floor at the bottom. So I kind of discovered though that made it way harder. So once the weight rested on the floor, and it was just perfect too because it was right at the bottom. So it was like a dead stop pause, I guess you could say. And so the weight wasn't there until I started pulling up again, and it made it way harder. So I don't know if I'll be able to mimic that ever again, but that wasn't the plan. The plan was to leave the weight like hanging, but like I said, I set it too low on the belt, so it just happened to just rest perfectly on the floor at the very bottom. But I did discover something, and that is that it made it way harder. So I'm not for sure if I'll do that in the future or not. Maybe as like a different way of training, but that wasn't the plan. So um, next time I'll make sure I set the weight a little bit higher so it doesn't do that. And then I did a final down set with the body weight only. I was shooting for about 6 to 8 reps. I was able to get 9. Now this is far off from my best, but I think I've done like 20 reps, but those weren't full extension. So I'm not going to count those for the future. I'm going to stick with the full extension reps and try to build from there, as I feel like those give just a more accurate gauge of strength increase. Because I feel like when I was doing the bent arm reps, I was just, the faster I went, the more reps I could get, because before you tire out completely. And plus, you don't know like the range of motion you're going each time. You could just be cutting the range of motion to get more reps. So that's why I've kind of decided to shy away from those style reps, and I've just been doing the full extension reps. So I'm going to stick with those for now, and just see if I can get some actual strength increases from those. Time will tell, I suppose, and if I'm consistent with it. So that's the name of the game, consistency. So later in the evening, I did a couple more movements. I wanted to get some low back work in. So I did some Zercher good mornings with a loading pin. So I was focusing on low back on this movement. I know a lot of people kind of shy away from doing low back movements, but I do think that low back is, it's very beneficial to train your low back and get some blood flow into that area, as from what I've read, that area doesn't get a lot of blood flow, especially if you're sitting quite a bit or just inactive in general. So it is beneficial to get some blood flow to that area. So you can train it rather light, and not worry about injuring yourself if that's a worry that you have. And this routine here, it was very light. I just did 30 pounds for 12, 35 for 12, 40 for 12, and then 50 for 12. So, like I said, I was training more for blood flow, so I kept the reps high, and didn't really feel like there was any pain. Um, so, if that's something you're worried about, I think as long as you keep as long as you don't have a terrible injury of some kind, and you keep the weights low and the reps high, should be fine. But I'm not an expert by any means, but that's kind of the theory that I use, and it's worked out for me. Um, if you have a movement you've never done before, always start light and just keep the reps high and build up a base before you go up. The last movement I did was just a dumbbell row with a fat grip, and I kept these reps. I didn't pause, so I kept the tension on my grip the entire time. So that was a limiting factor in the weights I could use, and that's what my goal was. I didn't really want to work up too high in the weight. I did decide to work up to like a heavier double, so I did 95 for 2, and that was pretty taxing. Didn't know if I was gonna be able to hold it or not, but I was able to for the 2 reps, and that's where I decided to stop. Didn't do a down set this time, as I didn't really feel it was needed, as the 75 for 12 was pretty difficult. So I'm unsure. I probably could have done maybe 80 for about 6 reps. I probably should have just done that, but I felt like this routine was sufficient enough. My back isn't really too terribly sore, so I think I could have done a few more exercises, but this is all I really had time for this day. So make do with the time you have, and that's what I did to the best of my ability. So that's what it is. If you have any favorite back workouts that you'd like to share, go ahead and share them. I'm always open to try new routines. And got any tips, questions, comments, leave them down below. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you soon.